Welcome, everyone. My name is Shane Fire. I'm with the Informatics and GIS statewide program. Welcome to the introduction to ArcGIS Online today. Just as a quick overview, I am with the University of California Agriculture and Natural Resources Division. We are the extension branch of the University of California. We have many programs. Some that you may know of are the cooperative extension offices in every county. You've probably heard of Master Gardeners or 4-H or hopefully some of these others, such as California Naturalists or IGIS, which I am part of. And so the people who are going to be here today who are helping and giving the presentations and so forth is first myself, Shane Fire. I'm going to be doing the introduction. My colleague, Dr. Sean Hogan, is going to be leading the workshop and working you through the exercises for the introduction to ArcGIS Online. And then 4 other of my colleagues are going to be here today. There's Dr. Andy Lyons, Ben Satzman, Robert Johnson, and Dr. Maggie Kelly. The 4 I just mentioned are going to be on here today to help answer questions, monitor the chat window, and just to make sure that we can help you if you have questions as you start to progress through this information and the exercises. So what I'd like to do as a first step here is really just find out who you are. And so if you could do me a favor, open up the chat window, type in your name, what you hope to learn from this workshop today, what your experience with ArcGIS Online is, whether it's like 1 if you're a beginner, 5 if you're an expert. I like to say that depending on the day and what I'm trying to do, sometimes I feel like a 1, sometimes I feel like a 5. So please just take a few minutes and just let us know how comfortable you are with ArcGIS Online and what you want to learn today. Okay, so you're hoping to get familiar with capabilities of ArcGIS. Yeah, these are definitely a good starting point, especially for ArcGIS Online. In was it 3 weeks or 2 weeks, Sean? 2 weeks or 3 weeks?
The next workshop?
Yeah, we have a workshop on Intro to ArcGIS Pro, I believe on the 17th of February. So we're going to get you started with ArcGIS Online today. And then we have another workshop coming up in several weeks to really get into ArcGIS Pro as well. And I'll second what Maggie just typed. Welcome, everyone. It's very nice to have you here today. We hope that what we give you today is a starting point to get you started using ArcGIS Online, eventually, hopefully using ArcGIS Pro. And I just want to quickly say, and I'll mention this later in my intro, but we are here to help and to help you understand these systems and hopefully get you to really start using them. So at that, let me just start going here. And thank you for putting in your thoughts and what you're hoping to get. So here's what we're going to cover today. We're working on the introduction right now. I'm going to go into a little bit about WebGIS and Esri, why ArcGIS Online, some core concepts which are really important to understand, design considerations, and then Sean's really going to jump into the workshop and really get into the overview of ArcGIS Online, where the different bells and whistles are, how to load data, how to symbolize data, things like that. And then he's just going to slowly build your skill set up so you can make a basic map, you can make a basic web app, and then how to incorporate that into a web app, into a website as an iframe. So he's just going to really start you from the basics and work you through. Hopefully by the end of this workshop at 4 o'clock, you'll feel pretty comfortable at using the tool. And if you're not comfortable, you'll know the questions to ask to get more comfortable. Pardon me as I get this Zoom thing out of my way. Okay, so we're going to talk about Esri. Esri's the company who has published and created ArcGIS Online as well as ArcGIS Pro, which we'll be talking about in a couple of weeks. And when you're talking about ArcGIS Online and you delve into the program, what you're going to hear a lot is web maps and web apps. I will tell you, you can make a web map and not have to make a web app. But you can't make a web app without a web map. We'll get into that more. But here's just some examples of different web maps and web apps that we've created inside of UCANR. For instance, we have a web map that shows where ANR employees are located throughout the state. We've also created, in the middle one is a story map that we created with leadership of ANR to do a virtual tour of the different facilities and different type of facilities we have around the state. And this is a story map that walks you through who ANR is. There's video content, there's photos, there's maps. It's just a really nice tool. And the last one off to the right is a web app. And I believe this is not from us. This is actually, I believe, from either CAL FIRE or the U.S. Forest Service, where they track incidents and fire incidences around the state. And you all are probably really familiar with the COVID-19 dashboard created by Johns Hopkins University. This was created using Esri tools as well. And in particular, this is a web app called the Dashboard. And you have access to those tools inside of ArcGIS Online. So I mentioned web maps and web apps. And like I said, you have to have a web map to work with data, but you don't have to have a web application. So a web map is a basic map that you can add in data from, let's say, a spreadsheet, and you can geolocate information. You can add in other data sets that are already available online, and we'll go into that. Or you can upload your own spatial data as shape files or file geodatabases. You add them to the map, and then you can customize the symbology. You can change the layout options of the data. You can label it. You can create infographics. And there are some analyses you can do. And this is all within the browser inside of ArcGIS Online. But now you have this web map. What can you do with it? You could share that with somebody, but then they could go in and modify your map and make some changes and things like that and save it as their own. Or you can create a web application. And with a web application, first off, you can make it more graphically appealing. And I'll show you what a web map looks like in a second. It's not that appealing, but you can basically put a wrapper around the web map with a web application, and you can set colors and fonts. And one nice thing about web applications is you can give people different tools and things they can do. And you can also limit things that you don't want them to do inside of a web application. Some really good examples of web applications are story maps, which I discussed a few seconds ago. The ANR tour is an example of that. The dashboard, like the Johns Hopkins University dashboard. And then there are many, many other apps that Esri has already created for you that you can use your web maps in. And one also really nice thing about Esri is you can extend the platform by developing your own web applications by using JavaScript and other tools to build out, whether it be your own web application or standard, what's the word I'm thinking of? Platform-specific applications, something specific for an iOS or an iPhone, or something specific for an Android phone. So you have a lot of flexibility beyond what Esri gives you. So ArcGIS Online. So something important to note is before Esri released ArcGIS Online, GIS was really in the realm of GIS professionals like the people that I've introduced you to on the IGIS team. We had specialized software on really high-powered computers. We did analyses for researchers or others or ourselves. We produced a cartographic product, usually a PDF or a paper map. We used it in publications, took it to events, and that was the realm of us. We did that for you. After 2012, Esri released this product called ArcGIS Online. And what that really did was it took GIS from the sole realm of GIS professionals like me and gave it to all of you. It became something you could do. You could create a map and visualize data in the way that you wanted to, and you could share it with others easily, not only as a paper map, which you could create, but you could actually just share it to people in a browser. You could share a link and they could go in and see what you want them to see. So before 2012, you couldn't do that. After that, ArcGIS Online was on the scene, as well as Google Earth and Google Maps and the predecessors to Google Maps. So this has been something that's been in development now for 10, 11 years. And I should note that Esri is constantly adding new features and new functions. About every 2 to 3 months, there's new functions rolled out that we all get access to. So it's a really powerful system that we've only had access to for about 10 years. So why would you want to use ArcGIS Online? Clearly, you all think it's a good thing. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here today, and I appreciate you coming. With ArcGIS Online, you may want to create a web map or a web app. You may want to create some other apps like story maps or field maps or dashboards. And with field maps, you can have people gather data for you through participatory science. You can also do really simple analyses. You can do, at least until just recently, you could do a analysis with vector data, points, lines, and polygons. And you had access to this huge amount of data. Before 2012 in ArcGIS Online, one of the limiting factors of doing GIS was actually finding data. They used to say finding data was 75 to 90% of a GIS project. Now with ArcGIS Online and the ArcGIS Living Atlas, which is part of ArcGIS Online, finding data is much, much simpler. I should note that also why you'd want to use ArcGIS Online is it's fast, it's really intuitive as far as GIS goes, and it's browser-based. So like the person who asked in the chat window how to install ArcGIS Pro in a Mac, and Sean said it's a little more complicated, and we probably need to have a separate conversation about that. ArcGIS Online can be on any computer, any browser, you're good. It can be on a tablet, a phone, any computer, whether it be a Mac, a Linux computer, a Chromebook, a Windows PC. ArcGIS Pro, in contrast, can only run on a Windows PC running 64-bit version of Windows. That's it. So there's vastly different use case and the ability to use those softwares. So why use ArcGIS Online? It's really important to note that it's this integration. I've kind of alluded to this. There's the data that you can get from ArcGIS Online. There's the design piece, which is the web map, where you can change your symbology, change your labels, and really make the data tell what you want to show. And then there's this development side. This is where I mentioned you can make a web app, such as story maps, dashboards, field maps, such as that. You can use apps that Esri already provides, or you can develop your own apps. So just by using the ArcGIS Online system, you have access to all the data they provide, as well as your own. You can design the maps, and then you can further develop and create your own apps. So it's really powerful in what it can do. But we do have to mention a few things that ArcGIS does not do well. So what it does not do well is cartography. You're limited on the outputs you can provide. You can put a print widget within ArcGIS Online, but when you hit print, it's not a very appealing map that comes out. So it can do cartography, but ArcGIS Pro, you can make absolutely gorgeous cartography. The maps you can make with Pro have a real professional appeal. You have a lot of options. You can really make it look good. ArcGIS Online, initially, at least out of the box, the projection is Web Mercator. And there are definite trade-offs with different projections. I'll try not to get into those too much, but basically every projection is a trade-off between distance and area and shape. And the one we're using here is called Web Mercator. It really allows you to have a wall-to-wall surface of the entire world, and you really, distances are off and areas are off. But it works for a basic map that you'd want to show to really have people zoom in and know where they are and provide some basic maps. The only way that I know of to change the projection of a web map in ArcGIS Online is the base maps that Sean's going to discuss. You have to have a base map that has a different projection. And all of Esri's base maps have Web Mercator projections, so that's what you're going to have. Another thing that why you may not want to use ArcGIS Online is, at least for analysis. Up until just recently, you can only do vector analyses, and there was a subset of analyses that you could do using vectors. But within the last 6-7 months, they're increasing that. You're now able to do image processing, spatial analysis, even machine learning and machine learning inferencing from rasters that are in the data. This is all new. But those tools have been in ArcGIS Pro for a long time, and they're constantly developing new tools for both Pro and Online. And Pro is where you really want to go for analysis. So ArcGIS Online is getting better, but it's not all the way there yet when it comes to analysis. So Esri software. So real quick, just a quick overview once again of the strengths of both of those. So ArcGIS Online, like I said, you have web maps, you have web apps, a lot of different apps from Esri, and you can build your own. Simple analysis, it's fast, it's intuitive, and it can be opened and used on any computer, any tablet, any phone. And I should point out that both of these have loads and loads of data you can get access to, including your own data. ArcGIS Pro, the real strengths are cartography, really advanced analysis, projection control, and basically, if you can think of it, you can probably do it in ArcGIS Pro. One thing about Pro, though, it's a different different type of license. And like I said, you have to have a Windows PC 64-bit to run it. So that's kind of the pros and cons. One thing I should note is that they're an integrated platform. So ArcGIS Pro is on your desktop. ArcGIS Online is in the cloud. To be more specific, it's on the Amazon Web Server up in the cloud run by Esri. And with those two softwares, you can trade data back and forth. You can work with web maps within ArcGIS Pro and save them back up on ArcGIS Online. You can transfer data from ArcGIS Pro up to Online. You can transfer data from ArcGIS Online back to Pro. So they've really, in the last couple of years, have really tightly integrated both these systems. And you'll see some of that today, and for sure on the 17th, if you attend the ArcGIS Pro workshop, you'll see how that integration works. But it really does work quite nice, and it's getting more and more slick as the time progresses. I just want to strike and hit home again. I keep mentioning you can use your own data. So we're going to quickly talk about local versus cloud formats. Local formats are data that you would develop on your desktop in desktop GIS. So those are things like file geodatabases, shape files, grids, CSV, so comma separated value tables, Excel tables, etc., and a bunch of other things. And those are specific to your PC, sometimes to your Mac and your Linux machine, depending on these specific things, as well as rasters, so images, drone imagery, things like that. You can take those and push those up to the cloud. And when it gets moved to the cloud, ArcGIS Online converts them from your local database formats to layers and services. And these are machine readable formats that you can program against and that the Esri tools know how to work with and use. Examples of those are feature layers, image layers, scene layers, elevation layers, and vector layers. But basically, they're all the same basic structure that the computers and the machines that you're going to be using in ArcGIS Online know how to read. And I should note that you can store them up as services, and then often a lot of these service types have the ability to download them back off to your computer as one of the types that you see in the local side as well. So you may be thinking, okay, so you're going to push your own data up to ArcGIS Online, but you may not want to share that with everyone. So I may put up some data that I've created, I move it up to ArcGIS Online, and I only want to have it for my own maps. So if I want to do that, I can share it with just me. But let's say I want to share that with a couple members from different parts of the organization of UCANR, let's say master gardeners. I'm creating a map for them. I can create the map, create the data, share it with me, but then I can also share it with a group inside of ANR, say master gardeners. Then only those in that group can see that map and see those data. I may also want to create some data where my organization should have access to it, but nobody else. Let's say it's really sensitive data within the organization. I can go in and say this data is only available to the organization. And you see that on the left in the image where organization checked. Now, no one else outside of UCANR could see those maps, but anyone in our organization could open them, query them, and really interrogate it and get more information out of it. The last option is you can say, I want everyone to see it. Anyone can get access to this map. Anyone can get access to the app. Anyone can get access to the data. You can do that as well. I would say to be careful doing that, though, because sometimes you may have data that you don't want everyone to have access to, or you don't have the right to share that. So be careful when you're making data available to everyone and make sure you have the right to do that. So real quick, let's just go through a quick workflow. This is some of the stuff you're going to be doing today. And that's you're going to build a web map and how you're going to build an app. So the quick thing is you open a web app. You're going to open a web map, sorry. You're then going to add data. And those data could come from ArcGIS Pro. They could come from data that's just on your computer. You could pull it in from the Living Atlas or directly from ArcGIS Online, and you'll see how to do that. That then gets saved into a web map. And then once your web map is ready, you can either load that into a web app, or you can load it into any other app or the experience builder or dashboards or whatever. You save it, you then share it either with everyone, your organization, a group, or yourself, and you've created a web map and you've created a web app. It's that simple, but there are many steps along the way to make it more complex, to really symbolize things and make it be what you want to be. And we're going to go through that today. So there are some design considerations for your web map. I kind of alluded to this when I was talking about sharing. So who are the users of your map or you're intending? What's the audience and or stakeholders? That's really important, because if you build it just for yourself and you have your internal thinking of what's important on a map, the people you're giving it to or sending it to or hoping are going to use it, they may not think the same way you do or be expecting the same things that you expect. So you really want to think about what's the use case and what they want to use it for. What is the objective of the map? This is a common thing I work with and my colleagues work with when we're working with researchers. For instance, are you making a map for a presentation, for a PowerPoint? Are you making a map for a publication? Are you making a map for a web map, specific or a web app? Each one of those could potentially have different reasons and different ways of showing the information because of the format they're going to be using. So you got to take that into account. Let's say you're doing a publication. What's the font of the publication? How big are you allowed? What are the margins? All those type of things. Is it black and white? Do they allow color? So those things need to be taken into account when you're creating a map or a web map. So then also, how is it going to be symbolized? Really important. Is it going to be graduated colors? Is it going to be single symbols? Really, you can. There's a book that people sometimes hear about, is How to Lie with Maps. You can tell different stories with different symbology and how you present the data. So you really need to take into account the symbology and what you make it look like. Also, there's the thing about what to show and what not to show. One thing I heard Esri say this last year, which is really stuck in my head, is when you're making a web map or a map, if you find yourself saying, okay, I'm going to make a map of, let's say, the locations of A&R staff around California, that's probably a good map to make. If the map is, I want to map the locations of A&R staff around California and the map of this, and you start saying you want more and more things on the map, the minute you say and, or there's a comma, those are different maps. You can have this tendency to build too much information into a map. So you got to fight that urge and keep it simple and tell your point and make sure it's easy. The last thing gets back at what I was talking about do you have permission to show those data? So are there ethical considerations of the map? So are you showing information that you don't have the permission to share? Are you showing information, or are there attributes of the data that you're making public that shouldn't be made public, like people's addresses, personal identifying information? Really important things to keep in mind is that you're not sharing data that you shouldn't, because there are sometimes legal ramifications as well as ethical ramifications to doing that. So be careful on what you share. There are some logistical considerations of the map. Will the map data be dynamic or can it be static? That's important because you can make a one-off map, keep it really simple, or is your data going to be constantly changing? Is the data under the hood? A prime example is let's say you have some data ranges set, and if you keep getting dynamic data and you can actually go beyond that data range, you may not actually see all the data. It may stop at that certain cutoff and you'll be missing data. So there are different things to think about if it's dynamic or static. What kind of data do you need and how will it be hosted? What we mean by hosting is it going to be hosted on ArcGIS Online, or is it going to be on your own server? Where's the data going to come from? Is the web map going to be part of an existing website? That's important because you want to think about colors. You want to think about accessibility. For a prime example is the website you're going to, hopefully it's not, but if it is still using the old HTTP URL structure, you will not be able to embed a web map because the web map in ArcGIS requires a secure HTTP site. So that's something to keep in mind. Also, if we're talking web apps, in particular web maps, are you hoping to have support for multiple platforms, so tablets, smartphones, etc.? Because the size of the display is going to change, and the symbology of the maps and the labeling of the maps and the pop-ups, you're going to want to take those considerations into the size of the screen to account because you may not be able to see everything on those smaller devices. Really important if you're hoping to gather data. So you want people to go out and do participatory science, or you want to go out yourself with some researchers and gather data in the field. Do you have access offline? Because this is a web-based system, if you want to gather data where you don't have internet access, you have to set it up specially so you can download the data onto your local device when you don't have web access. We have trainings on this there's actually a training. I don't know if we have it coming up this spring or not, It's called Field Maps, Introductory to Field Maps, where we get into offline access. And that also plays into the next item here. Do you need to collect field data using the application? And if so, there are specific applications you're going to want to use. And then also, if you want to go beyond what Esri provides, you're going to have to do custom programming. And if you don't have custom programming skills, you're going to have to contract with someone or ask people to help with that. And there's an added expense to that. So these are just logistical things to consider when working on web maps and web apps, especially when you get into Esri software. So I've mentioned throughout here, there's some other trainings coming up. If you go to the IGIS site at http://igis.ucanr, and if you were to go to the training page, you'll see the hyperlink here, or the tab for training. This is kept up to date. You will see our updated trainings that are going to be coming up. Granted, this picture isn't up to date after I say that, but we do have an intro to ArcGIS Pro coming up on the 17th, as well as an introduction to Jupyter Notebooks on April 7th. And then we're going to be doing a webinar on machine learning in the ArcGIS platform. It's just not scheduled yet, but that'll be coming up. So with everything I just said, we're going to shift gears here. Dr. Sean Hogan's going to take over, and we are going to get into the workshop and really hit the ground and learn how to use ArcGIS Online. And I'd want to point out during the break and throughout this session, please ask questions, put them in the chat window. We're here to answer them for you. Also, check your emails. We will send out some messages from us asking you to fill out a survey at the end of the training, telling us how we did. If there's anything you'd recommend we change or modify, we do take them serious and we do read them. So with that, Sean, I'll turn it over to you.
Excellent. Excellent. Thanks, Shane. As always, you're kind of a hard act to follow because you really nailed a lot of things very concisely that we'll be going over through the exercise, and that will hopefully make some of the things that Shane was talking about even more clear. I'll be reiterating a lot of the same points that he just went over in his presentation, which is great preface to what I'm covering here.
Thank you, Sean. And you guys are in good hands. So have fun, Sean.
And yeah, speaking of in good hands too, we have our whole team here to help support you. There's usually people can make it through the material pretty well. There's the one thing that holds people up is their access to ArcGIS Online, or their accounts aren't set up quite right, or possibly sometimes they'll be using an ArcGIS Online account from another organization, like say UC Berkeley, and that sometimes can I don't know, hold people up a little bit. But if you have not set up your ArcGIS Online, this would be a good time to reach out in the chat to the good hands that we're speaking of. Robert Johnson, Shane Fire, be there in the chat, Maggie Kelly, Andy Lyons, all of us, Ben Satzman, any one of us can help you. We'll be taking a break in about 20 minutes. And during that time, if you haven't got your account set up, they can get you all ready before we really get our hands dirty with the material. Because the next 20 minutes, I'm just going to go through like an info only kind of session. I'll just go through some of the steps, show you where you're going, point out where the buttons and levers are at. So then when we're going on more hands-on and I say click here, you kind of already have a little bit of a sense of where here is on the screen. A couple little house cleaning kind of things. Sometimes we don't have a certain amount of real estate on our screen. You might have the zoom up looking at me. You'll have the exercise, which I sent out at 10:43 earlier today. If you didn't get that, that's it should have come in looking something. Make sure that I am sharing screen. Let me share right now. Should have looked a little something like this. Inside of that email, you'll see there's the Zoom information. You already have that, obviously. But the workshop exercise is there, as well as the introductory presentation that Shane just gave. So that was at 10:43. If you have any trouble finding that, just let us know in the chat. We can get you another link. other thing is the exercise itself and I mentioned that we only have so much real estate on our screen. My preference, and everyone else here probably has become a Zoom expert after COVID, but through trial and error, what I found that I prefer to do is set the exercise up over to the left side of the screen and then have my working session a little bit offset to the right. Sometimes but not all the way to the right, so I can kind of squeeze the Zoom bar off to the side. So it's not covering up the things that I really need to see. While I'm presenting, because I have so many things open, if you have a question, again, you throw it in the chat. One of the team can often just answer the questions there, or can to relay that to me during certain breaks. And then when we're at our like say 5 or 10 minute breaks, we have every like half hour or hour or so, then that's a good time to unmute and you can just ask us directly then. I know that we're not born with the knowledge of how to use these apps. So there are no dumb questions. Even if we kind of answered it and you can't remember what we were talking about before, please just ask again. This is, I know that everybody here is just getting the hang of this. I saw a lot of ones in how experienced you are with it. So I'll try to dial in the speed of the material kind of accordingly. Not try to fire hose you with too much stuff. There's the exercise will have more information in it than I'll go over. There's a bunch you'll see through here. If you look at the exercise, there's sections that are labeled information only. That's kind of like peripheral information about the steps that we're taking that is important to me. I try to frame these workshops such that it's like I'm delivering the information that I wish I knew when I first started. And some of that is just peripheral information that's not directly like necessary for the step you're doing, but it helps explain what you're doing throughout the exercise. There's also optional, I have to scroll down a little bit further to find something like that, but there's optional steps that are in here like this. There's you can optionally explore bringing in other layers. For example, in this case, we'll skip over most of those because we have about 10 gallons of information to share to you in like a 5-gallon bucket of time. So we'll skip over those, but you can always go back to that later on your own time and check those out. I mentioned earlier, but it was before the session started, about our office hours. We have office hours on Mondays and Tuesdays. You can go to the IGIS website and sign up for that. You search UCANR-IGIS, and you probably will be able to find that on our website fairly easily. But and those are for more detailed questions, like how to set up like parallels on a Mac or something like that may or may not work out with your computer. But there's or like what do I need to do in the step in the exercise where I'm stuck at? I know many of time I've been working with GIS or remote sensing software and spent hours not knowing that what I needed to do was only one button click away. And so we can help take those that learning curve edge off a little bit with our extra help if you need it. We're always happy to help. With that, I want to show you a little bit of where we're going. And this is going to be the map that we'll be developing today. We have a fire thematic map that we'll be working on, specifically the Caldor fire that happened a couple of years ago now. That was a big deal for me. I'll kind of touch on that story later on when we're getting into it. Actually, I might as well do it right now. I usually save that for later. My property was right on this little section here, it was right across the street of Grizzly Flat Road at the end of Caldor Road, which is right here. And there was spot fires on my property, burned up a couple acres. I was there the night that it really got going at my dad's house that ended up getting burned all the way around. That's like right inside of one of those like mouths of non-burned area. It was kind of very I don't know what the right word for it is, not exciting, not worrisome, I guess might be the word for it. And so I whipped up a fire map in a hurry to be able to monitor the progress of the fire to see if it was going to burn down my dad's house, and miraculously it didn't. But that with all that data that I collected, my screen just died on me there. That is a reminder, though, that you want to make sure you save your work frequently throughout your sessions, or else when something like that happens, you sometimes will lose your map. Anyway, so yeah, I whipped up a map very similar to this, and I shared it just through Facebook with friends, and it caught fire. Well, there's a pun there, I guess. And the next thing I knew, there was about 91,000 people looking at it. So that's why we repurposed that same kind of data thematic idea to the workshop. So there's the little bit of backstory there. So anyways, this is the way that what we'll be working toward. Shane mentioned that we do appreciate the feedback on our evaluations. One of the things that people have commented on in the past, other than how do I lay out where my windows are on my limited computer screen space, is to maybe show a little example of where we're going with the map. So that idea is already in folks' minds as we're moving through steps that don't make that clear until the very end. As far as ArcGIS Online, let's show a little bit of the buttons and levers. And this is something that all of you can do right now, just to make sure your account's working, is go open up your browser and just search for ArcGIS Online login. It's already there because I did it earlier. And then go down to sign in. It's going to look a little different for you than me because I'm already signed in on this computer. So when you click on that, it should come up and give you a username and password, which hopefully you have set up through IGIS or your organization. And I noticed just today that the pop-up window has changed very recently. So this is what it might look like for you when it comes up. Sometimes it'll come up to your organization or come up to your home, or at least it has in the past. What I'm referring to is this horizontal set of tabs across the top of your screen that are different options for working with your data in ArcGIS Online. Home is not that important. It's just kind of a splash screen showing something that maybe your organization set up. And in our case, our organization at UCANR is really like this page is all handled by IGIS. And specifically, Shane and Robert helped set this up. Next is Gallery. Gallery is awesome for perusing all of the data that your organization has curated and has shared outside of just their own personal use. So Shane showed the sharing options earlier. We'll kind of touch on that again, but when you share at the organizational level or above, then all of those either maps or layers or scenes or apps or tools or whatever the case is, files that you've shared, those will become available to your organization. And now we have hundreds and hundreds of them in our collection here. There's also the other options of ArcGIS Online and Living Atlas that we'll touch on in a bit that are that give you just literally hundreds of thousands of options of data nowadays. And as Shane very aptly pointed out, getting your data used to be the biggest deal. Now it's right at your fingertips in just an amazing way. And it makes mapping so much more convenient and efficient. So anyways, here's your gallery. You can subset it by, say, maps, or you can do it by map files or layers. And then you can see it just switches around. And sometimes these layers will be things that that you're worried, like, say, the NAS cropland data. I'm not sure if that's still maintained in ArcGIS Online, but if you want to capture a certain date, you can sometimes download that or assume that into your collection in different ways that we'll kind of touch on. Map, actually, I'm going to come back to map because that's something that we're going to, that's where you usually work at. And I'm going just horizontally across the top options, but we'll come back to map because that's mostly what we'll be doing today. Scene, this is just neat to look at. Once you have map data that's set up, you can represent it in three-dimensionally, which is fun. Sometimes I'm just going to pick one of our random scenes in our collection. And this gives you the option of looking at your data again in something other than just flat, like a flat map looking scene, 2-dimension. This is more like 2.5 dimension. You can't look up and under things, giving it full 3-dimension, but close enough. And with this, you can see, you can scroll around, you can pivot. And what doing this reminds me that if any of you don't have a mouse right now or a trackball, if during the break you can find one, that would be fantastic because it's really hard to work in GIS without a mouse or a trackball. Referring to like you trying to use the touchpad on your laptop, for example, it's just so much more difficult. So anyways, that's the scene. The neat thing about this is if you're going to, if you get a nice map of some sort that you want to represent in this kind of type of view, you can load it in here, save it, and share it. We'll get to that in a minute, but you can share it and then copy the URL and plug it into, say, an iframe on your website, or send it to someone in an email, for example. So that's what you can do. One thing that you might notice is that horizontal ribbon across the top has disappeared. Now you have a drop down, just one that'll give you the same options essentially. So the home, gallery, we already looked at, we're coming back to that. Notebook would be next. So I'm going to click on that. So traditionally ArcGIS, online applications were for visualization and sharing. Now it's quickly becoming possible to do analysis in the online environment as well. And one of the ways that has come to be is with notebooks. And so Notebook in here is built on top of Jupyter Notebooks, if you're familiar with that, where you can bring in packages in Python packages and be able to run more complex analysis that then you can add or adjust or tweak layers within your maps without having to go into your desktop. It takes a little bit of programming experience to do that effectively, or in my case, my favorite way is copy and paste and make little tweaks to other people's codes. But yeah, that can be brought in here. And then what I really like too, and this has come about in the last 6 months or so, is the different options of processing. And so by default, you'll have your standard speed of processing. It doesn't take much, it doesn't make your process go fast, but it works. But if you need higher speed processing, you have the advanced with GPU support that then burn credits of your organization. And depending on what license arrangement you have, you can use those sometimes. For IGIS, I think we have a limit that we allot to each user. But if you need more, you can always ask us, and we can work that out. We'll see some more stuff about credits in a little bit. But anyway, so yeah, this would be Jupyter Notebook, like notebooks underneath here that you can use for deeper analysis. Let's see, next, groups. Shane talked about the sharing. I noted that the sharing can be done at multiple levels. One, you can just have it solely for your own use. The next step up would be to set up a group. Like what you might see in here. I have a number of them: Cal Naturalist, just random content, Ground Squirrel Project, a variety of groups. The value of this is sometimes you want to work collaboratively on a project. And this really comes to play when you're looking at, say, like field map use, where you want to have just a team of people that happen to know what data you are working with and how to use it, say with a mobile data collection app. And so you don't have just a random person come along and say, I'm going to add in, like, say, some value for a tree, for example, that doesn't have the training to do so. And so you can set up just small groups and then share your maps and your layers and access and so forth to just that group. So that's the next layer up, just from yourself. The next above that would be your whole organization. And then there's share to everybody options, which is important if you're actually making a web map that you want to send out to the world, so to speak. You need to have that, you have to set the sharing access accordingly. And so if you, and that includes if you create a map that we'll be looking at shortly, all of the layers within that have to be shared openly to everyone. Content. So content is where one of the next most likely places you're going to work other than in your map environment. And this is where everything you have piles up. I say piled up because I keep on adding extra practice layers for fire mapping and all kinds of things in here. There's story maps. You see web maps, web mapping applications. We'll talk about the difference between those and very shortly. Feature layers, hosted. So a hosted feature layer is specifically a shared kind of setting. So if you're using someone else's feature layer, then the hosting levels, it can be tweaked so you can't do certain types of analysis, for example, or you can't I don't know, you can't use it in certain contexts for your project. There's kind of ways around that to create a hosted layer from a non-hosted feature layer that I'll show you a trick to that shortly. But anyways, this is where you'll see all your data. You'll also be able to set up folders. And since all of you are new, you won't have any folders here. But in my case, I have a training folder. I have different for a number of different things. So to try to keep things organized. That's something that's practical because this will add up a lot. I'm going to expand this a little bit. There's also the stars. So if you are going to add something to your favorites, and for example, if you have a layer that you want to use all the time, like your say your collaborative field maps practice, which I've used in a number of workshops, that's I add that to the favorites so it's easily found. Groups, you'll see the groups. This is just another redundant way to see the groups that that I showed you before up here with the other tab. Esri likes to have redundant ways to get to the things that you want, and that is handy in a lot of cases. It makes it just more efficient in some context to be able to do what you want to do. And then one more thing that you might want to know is the searching option. And I'm going to just type in junk because you'll see when I create layers, I always put junk as one of the tags. That way I can go through and clean out, like check all of these and then delete them because they're just extra files. And I'm not going to worry about that right now, but there's, you'll be required to add tags to data that you add to your maps. And that makes it so it's more easily discoverable, not just by other people, but by yourself or for yourself. Because I know if you have, in my case, hundreds and hundreds of layers, you want to have it discoverable or searchable more easily. And so there's some other things like changing owners where you can turn over ownership of data sets or maps to someone else so they have administrative authority over them, things like that. So that you see across here that will come up later. And interestingly too, there's one more tab over here, there's also the redundant My Organization that we'll look at up here, and Living Atlas. And this is something we'll look at here. And speaking of redundant things, there's this is another way of perusing online data that's available to you, kind of analogous to the gallery of the organization, but on Living Atlas is there's a very large curation of data. And then there's some categorical like themes that you can look up data through. And all of this is, again, at your fingertips to throw into your web maps as you move onward. Two more things, and then we'll take a break. The organization. This shows the credits that are available for use, the total number of members that we have within our organization that have ArcGIS Online, which is awesome to see that number going up and up over time. And then, yeah, our credit amount and so forth for the organization. Again, that's credits for everybody that all 697 people use. If you use up those credits, then that ends up being kind of a I don't know, potentially expensive endeavor because of the credits. It costs money to get more. I said that I saved the map for the last. Actually, before I do that, I clicked on the map tab. I'm going to go back so you can see what I did. So I was back in the organization, but one thing I'll note, there's a number of other peripheral apps that are associated with ArcGIS Online that are extremely useful to have shortcuts to. Story Maps, Map Viewer, Experience Builder, Living Atlas, another tab for ArcGIS Online, which is handy sometimes if you want to have more than one ArcGIS Online session open at once. So you say you want to look at your web mapping application and your underlying web map. What I just said there will make sense soon. There's you can have both tabs for both of them open. There's also Survey 1, 2, 3, and a whole bunch of them. I forget, like 25, 26 of them or so like that are available. These are all tied to ArcGIS Online as if ArcGIS Online is a hub for data that generally you can find in your content. Now moving on to map. And I saved this for last because this is where we're going to take off right after the break. We'll take in 2 minutes. The map environment, this is the classic map viewer. So there's it says open in map viewer. We're looking at in classic viewer. The reason why we don't use the map viewer up here is because a lot of the analysis functions have not been added to that yet. They don't call it beta anymore, but it might as well be a beta until they get the analysis functions added in there that we'll be using in the workshop. Just a note next to that, and I'm talking about right at the top of the screen, you'll see new map as one of the options, and you can create a new map if you already have something in there, and that will be pertinent right after the break because we're going to take a 10-minute break now. And while we're on that 10-minute break, I'm going to have you just go ahead and look at this map. Hopefully everybody's account set up. If not, make sure you get a hold of just ask in the chat. When you open up map, it should automatically come up to about, and then there's a little teeny tutorial that's over here on the left side. If you'd like to follow that in that 10 minutes, that's fine. If you don't, that's okay. We'll be kind of going over the same stuff that is included here to some degree during the next couple hours. But it's it's a good place to start to just get beginning orientation. When we get back, then I'll talk about what the map environment does, because it's much easier to actually bring data in yourself to see what the functions are than for me to try to show you, and then you have to do it again right thereafter. All right. So let's take a break until 2:10. Have everybody shake their legs maybe. If you want to, if you have any questions, throw them out there. You can unmute if you'd like. I'll hang on for a couple minutes, and then I'm going to get up and walk around myself. And then again, we'll return at 2:10. And then thereafter, we'll probably take a 5-minute break about every half hour just to let people decompress, because we don't want to fire hose you with too much and fatigue, create fatigue on this beautiful Friday afternoon. All right. All right, we'll get started in just a minute. Once again, just something to note, we are recording this session, and that video will be posted on our ArcGIS YouTube channel sometime mid next week. Usually they get to it by about Tuesday or Wednesday. That there's some editing that's involved there, and then some time in the upload process and so forth. But it is worth noting, though, that we do have quite a collection of training videos now available on our ArcGIS YouTube channel. And for that, you just go on YouTube and search ArcGIS channel, and you should be able to find it pretty well. But when it is up, I'll send out a link to everybody to get to it. All right, let's get started again. Go back to sharing my screen. So everyone has their own strategies for going through this workshop. Sometimes people like to just jump ahead and go through the exercise step by step, and then ask questions at certain points when if you run into anything that's I don't know, troubling you or get confusing things a little bit. So you can do that if you'd like. Sometimes people like to just listen to the presentation and then go through the actual hands-on steps later. That's understandable, given that it's kind of hard to bounce between the exercise and, say, copy and pasting names or titles or whatever into your ArcGIS Online session. But that is a little bit of a challenge. And then very often, probably most often, people will find a way to put my screen over to the side and then try to copy what I'm doing in another window with repeating or replicating the steps that I'm taking. Again, I will mostly go through the exercise in line with what's there. I might do a couple things out of order slightly. I'll leave some things out just for time's sake, and sometimes I'll include comments or tips that are not in there, just stream of conscious things that come up that I just, again, wish I would have known when I was first doing ArcGIS or ArcGIS Online. But without further ado, let's start working with this. And what I hope right now is that you're in the my map section. So there should be the option of map. If you have the horizontal ribbon across the top, it should look a little something like this. If you were working with the about tutorial on the side, you might need to start a new map, in which case you just go over to the top over here, create new map, and then it'll give you a blank map. You want to make sure that if you are working on a map that you want to save, that you do save before you do that, or you'll lose the work that you have. Again, there's this basic tutorial you can come back to later. The about part is not really that critical for what we're doing right now, but content is going to be something that we're going to be interested in very soon. I want to show you where some of the other options are up here. We can add data. We're in the details right now. You can add data if you'd like from a variety of sources, whether it's from your computer or online sources, including ArcGIS Online and Living Atlas. You can change the base map to a whole variety of different options. I forget how many there are here, something in the order of like 25 or so different options. And then there's an analysis tab. There's save and save as, we'll get to that soon, share and print and so forth, some other options across the top that you can see. But you won't be able to do much until you have some data in there. So hopefully everybody's back in the seat and have this up. If you don't, throw it in the chat right now. But what the first thing I'd like you to do is just add a basic layer, and we'll go into add, click the drop down and select search for layers is the first option under add, and click that. Since you will be new to this in most of your cases, you won't have any My Content yet. So we'll want to click the drop-down arrow right next to the My Content, and instead select the last option of ArcGIS Online. Because ArcGIS Online in that Amazon cloud that Shane mentioned earlier, there's a ton of different layers that are available to you. And one layer that's really handy to have, just for a number of different things, is a USA County layer. So under the search option, under ArcGIS Online, just type in counties. Counties, IES. And USA Counties should, interesting. Type in USA Counties. Maybe that'll work. And enter. Oh, here's one that's similar to what we're looking for. That's interesting. Sometimes you'll see that things have changed. It used to be just a USA Counties by Esri that was available, and that is interestingly not there anymore. But this is essentially the same layer. Oh, no. This would be it, probably. They updated it late in November. That's why it's got a different view. If I click on that, so that's the second option down under USA Counties. They must have deprecated the older version. What you'll see is a bunch of what's called metadata. The description is the information or data about the data. And this is handy in a lot of cases because it will tell you tell you a lot about the data and what the source is, which is important if you're going to publish it and you want to make sure that it's from a reliable source. And sometimes where you need to give credit where credit's due if you're publishing something online, so people can see that's available. I mean, it has been shared openly to everyone, so there's not like a limitation that you're allowed to use it, but you want to know that it's the right data that it's data that you're confident in. So once you've gone through this, get down to the bottom and you can click on Add to Map, and you'll see it appear over the top of your map here. And then we can use the little X button right at the top of that window pane that popped up and just close that. And then you can click the back button next to ArcGIS Online to go back to your content. And now you see that the USA Counties are available in your contents. Something to note is that when you add layers in, they'll pile up, in a general convention is to put the smallest layers on top and the bigger layers down below. Like point layers are generally on top, and we'll bring some of that in shortly. Because the order that they are in your contents over here will be the order that they're drawn on your map. Now, if you have a rollerball or mouse, this is a good time to use it, where you can just scroll around and see different counties. This is in the case of what we're working on today. There's each of the 58 counties in California has a cooperative extension office, which is a part of UCANR, with a number of resources that are available for set counties that they represent, and that includes things like CalFresh, FNEPs. There's land use advisors, whether it be crop or natural resource advisors. We have a bunch of resources throughout the state, and that's something we'll be thematically working on today.
Hey, Sean, if I can make one addition, you mentioned you could use a scroll bar or a mouse to go in and out. Another way a shortcut to zoom into a specific area is hold down the Shift key and draw a box on the screen, and it'll zoom to the extent of that box.
Oh, yeah. Good point. So first thing I'll have you do is because, and I mentioned this earlier, there was no sense in like going over the buttons and levers before we had data in here, is that now that you have the USA counties in here, go ahead and take time on your own for a moment just to peruse the different options that are right underneath the USA county label. So what you'll see is the legend, you'll have attribute table, you'll have your change your style, or sometimes called symbology. There's the filter that we'll be playing with in a little bit, and then perform analysis. And what I usually use the most is these three little horizontal buttons that have things like zoom to layer. It'd be one of them that's interesting, zoom to. And you see it pop up with the projection being kind of funny. You can see how large Alaska is up there, but there's yes. So here, that's another way that you can zoom to an area that's of interest. And then a number of other things like remove pop-ups and visibility range that's really important. That's one that I should touch on real quick, is that setting visibility range. One of the layers that we'll be bringing in a little bit has a default visibility range that is not really aligned with the scale that we'll be working at. And if you saw what I just did there's this little slider with a gray area that shows what visibility range something will appear on your map. And if I zoom in, you'll see this little teeny triangle on the bar move. And if I move it again, then back to that. It shifts. If this gray area gets outside of that, then the layer will not appear on your map. So we'll come back to that when we get to the layer that we brought in. But for now, go ahead and just play with these different options. There's nothing you're going to break there, and just check them out for now. I'll give you a minute or so to do that. Good. So now this section of the workshop exercise, we're going to mostly be just adding layers in for now. And so we start off with the counties. There's options that you can explore, different ones that like major cities, all that stuff that's in the directions, but don't worry about that right now for time's sake. There's the adding data from ArcGIS Online, again, another section. And what we're going to do with this is add some Caldor fire data to the map. And so we'll use the same steps as we did before, where we click the add dropdown, go down to search for layers. This time it defaulted to ArcGIS Online because that's the last place that I brought data in from. But if not, you might have to select that. So add from ArcGIS Online. And this time, instead of USA counties, let's type in Caldor fire. CALDOR. And then click enter to have it search. And what we'll want to add off to start with is the first option of the Caldor DINS public view. Actually, let's go with the number 2, the Caldor final burn severity for team. That's from the Natural Resource Conservation Service of the USGS. And so if I click on that one, you'll see information about it again. This is actually a pretty good layer, very robust. I actually have a friend that was one of the people that helped collect this data for Caldor fire. But what we can do is add this to the map, and what you'll see, hopefully, there you go. You'll have a layer that will come in that shows the burn severity of the fire. And now I'm going to click off of that and zoom out a little bit so you can see it. But look, just like I talked about before, remember I said that the visibility range of one of the layers we were going to bring in wasn't going to work out. And that's because it's set by default to not what we need. So what I'll do is go back up to the back arrow at the top and go down to the Caldor fire burn severity for team layer click the 3 horizontal dots, and then select Set Visibility Range. And you see how the little dark triangle is outside of the visibility range. So we'll have to just grab the bar and drag it over to the side. And then that should appear right there on your map. Good. And then we're good to go. So now you have that nice area. You can see where there was this really, really hot burned area. That was when the fire really got going. When it was like it kind of simmered for a couple of days and then just exploded up the moving northwards with the winds. Good. So we have that in there. Now let's go down and we're going to, oh, I did them out of order. I should have added the DINS one first. That's fine. The public view. It actually works out that I'm doing it in this order in a way. I'll show you why. We're going to add a layer again. Search for layers. By default, it should come up to the last place. And then we'll do the public view DINS. One thing to note is that you don't have to click on it and then click add to map down the bottom. You can just click, if you know what the layer is, and I do, and you can pretend that you do for now too, you can just click on this little plus sign and it'll add it in there. This is the damage assessment of houses within the fire area, with color coded for how damaged they were. Red being completely burned, and then different levels. Once that's in, the reason I said it's kind of handy that I did this a little bit out of order is because then the most recent layer that I added in goes on top. Otherwise, it would have been underneath and you wouldn't be able to see a lot of the burned area or burned structures. So what I would then have to do is grab the layer to drag it on top to see where the actual point layer is at. Good. We're going to change the names of these in a moment too. Moving downward in the direction. So we're moving from page 13 to page 14. We already added this in there. Moving on to page 15, we already talked about the bar. I said I did this a little bit out of order. Next, we're going to add in data from a living atlas. Before we do that, though, and there's this info only, so and we'll return to it. But you can also add in other layers from your personal computer, uploading them like shape files, CSV files, GPX. And so on that are available. We'll see how to do that shortly. So next, though, we're going to add in some living atlas data. Specifically, we can search for, I'm going to drag this over here. We can search for wildfire risk to communities. I'm going to just Control-C that, copy it, go back over here. I'm going to go to Add. And this time you'll see the second option is Browse Living Atlas, and I'll click that. I'm not going to have Caldor Fire. Instead, I'm going to paste in Control-V, Wildfire Risk to Communities, and click Return. And the first option is the one that we'll want. And with this, again, you can click just the plus sign instead of having we can look at it to see. It shows that an index that quantifies the potential for wildfire. And I'll just click Add to Map on this one. And it's going to cover up or go behind. This comes in as a base map that's base map being set like a little bit different than one of the layered rasters that we're bringing in. What that means is the type of service it is, the image service that it is, you don't have quite the full ability to do analysis with it. But and there's ways that you can scrape this off of here and use it in your analysis, but that's that's some for another day there. But what I find really neat and interesting about bringing in this layer is if you look at the comparison of the Caldor final burn severity and turn it on and off here, you'll see that they line up pretty well. I mean, they're what the prediction was, and granted, it's a coarser scale with the wildfire risk communities. But if you turn on and off that burn severity for teams, the hottest areas were where the risk was the greatest comparing between maps. And that's important. If you say whoever came up with the model for the risk, they get some validation that the fire actually burned the hottest where it was predicted. With a caveat too, there's other factors that are involved, like temperature, relative humidity, other things depending on the day of this, when the fire passed through. Back to the options, you can also add in some other layers, optional. One that's kind of neat is air quality. So you can search for air quality in the Living Atlas as well, Control C. This is optional. You may or may not want to do this, but I'll just do it really quick just to show and tell. Throw in here, add in air quality, click enter. There's something pertinent that I remember about this right now. So this is the current air quality. I could look at it inside, but I'm gonna just add it to the map right now. And it's kind of hard to see because there's just too much color on here right now. So what I'll do is I'll go and turn off some of these other layers. Oops, I'm gonna leave that one on. Turn off this. Zoom out a little bit to find, there's the air quality stations, and they're really low. They're like 26, 21. They're very healthy kind of levels. During this fire, some of these reached 1300. And if you pay attention to that, but anything above like 200 is very uncomfortable. But it's interesting. Well, the reason I bring this up is that these values change all the time. And one of the ways that you can capture that value in time, because at 20 minutes or half hour from now, it's going to change, and it might change again. And if you want to capture that value for like analysis later on, what you can do is go into your analysis and either join with using the feature analysis. You can either join or enrich that data with something else. So what I might do is, let's see, use proximity. No, which one was it? Join features. You can click join features and then join this layer to the counties layer, for example, just another flat like vector file. And then the resulting file will end up in your collection of your content, and it'll retain the value of what is currently the air quality in this case. And so so like 2 weeks from now or a month from now, you can refer back to it, wherein the active dynamic layer that we're looking at right now will change between now and then. But I digress now. So I'm going to go back. You don't need to do that. That was part of the optional stuff here. Last thing we'll do, and then we'll take a break, is add tabular data. And for that, we're going to be down on, see, page 17, kind of in the middle. Go ahead and use that link. Note that sometimes your browsers will, if you're having a hard time, you can't copy and paste because of the PDF format. You might want to open up the right click on your PDF and open it up in like Chrome or Microsoft Edge or something like that. And then you'll be able to copy and paste from these, just as a side note. But for now, I'm going to open this up here and then download it with the little drop down at the top right-hand corner. what this is, I'm going to show it in the folder and double click it to bring it up so you can see it. Oops, this is our role for the class. I don't need that open anymore. What we have here are the addresses for all of the UCANR cooperative extension offices. And this is just one example of how you might want to bring in tabular data into a project. And you can imagine that you may want to map, I don't know, the addresses of your shareholders or any number of other different kind of, I don't know, maybe survey results, like paper survey where people go out and record information, and all you have is an address. You could also have latitude and longitude, but most people don't know the latitude and longitude of their house, for example, or their business, but they do know the actual street address. Well, the nice thing about ArcGIS Online is it can geocode all of these positions and throw them on your map automatically for you. I'm thinking like a search engine like Google Earth or something like that, or Google Maps could do. ArcGIS Online does that as well, as long as you have an address, and then you can have other ancillary information about like what the name of it is or further columns if it calls for it. But I just wanted to show this to you. This has to be either a CSV, comma separated value, or a text file for ArcGIS Online to be able to bring it in. So I'm going to close this. Don't save it for now. I'm going to go back to my ArcGIS Online session, and this time, so all of you do that too. You'll switch over to back to your map, go into Add Data, and then Add Layer from File is the second from the bottom option, and click that. So you'll see the various options, the ones that you can bring in. Shapefile, it is really important to note though, if you bring it in a shapefile, it has to be all of the peripheral files, like the database file, the actual shape file, you name it, all of the different, the shapefile is not just one file, it's a whole bunch of files. They all have to be zipped together to be brought in. I mentioned CSV or text, GPX or GPS exchange file, any of these that you can bring in, and we're just going to click import. Oh, excuse me. First click choose file. And I am going to go to, let's see, I'll go to my downloads. You probably will do the same thing. And we have the ANR location CSV, and just click on that and open. And then finally, import layers. So it might take you a moment to navigate to that. So I'll pause so you can do that yourself. So you just add layer from file, go find the layer that you brought in, and then import it. Noting that I know that on an Apple that process, like finding your file, might be in a different location, but that's generally the same principle applies. So when you get this far, what you'll see is the ArcGIS Online does a pretty good job of lining things up. So you have you have the field name, location field, but most importantly, address lines up with address. And so if that does that on its own, which it almost always does, it recognizes recognizes that field correctly. We'll click Add Layer, and you'll see that pop in. Unfortunately, though, we have all of those air quality options there. I'm going to turn that off. So you can turn those off by checking them in your over here on your contents. So then you don't have to see all of that. And I'll just zoom in a little bit. And this is a good spot for us to take a 5-minute break. And then we'll come back and start doing a little bit of stylization and some basic analysis. Sound good? Anybody have any questions? Let's come back at 2:45. Sound good? Well, let's see. I see Caitlin had a question about there being more steps when trying to add the layer from file, which included needing 2.28 credits. If you're using one of our accounts, go ahead and use the credits. That's not a problem, but I've never heard of that happening before. That's interesting. Oh, it does take credits to run the geoprocessing though, so that makes sense.
Yeah, the geoprocessing would take probably a credit or two.
Yeah, that makes sense. So yeah, go ahead, just add it in there. It's strange that there was more steps. It usually just recognizes the address and then goes. It's kind of a funny story. We had one of our advisors was doing a project down in Southern California and geocoded like 400 and something thousand addresses. And I think that we were a little bit surprised when our allotment went down like 450,000 credits at once. Yeah, so after that, we've had a limit on credit use. Anyways, sounds like you're all set then, and we are ready to get back into action here. All right, let's shut down the chat and get back to this. So now we are.
Hey, Sean, one
Yes.
quick thing, mentioning credits. Anyone in A&R who needs more credits than you're allotted, reach out to us. We can help you with that.
Yeah, definitely. And this is there. Funny, my screen was just glitching. Unfortunately, my Zoom is strangely hiding itself, which is handy in a way, but I had to get used to it. Must be an update. All right, great. So now we should be at roughly the bottom of page 17. There's a little bit of info only that we'll skip over about a feature layer versus hosted feature layer, which I already kind of lightly touched on. We're going to work with a little bit of the tabular data, or the tables of the data that we already have in here, specifically the damage inspection data, because sometimes you'll need to filter your data. There's just too many houses here that are really that we want to deal with right now. I know in Grizzly Flat alone, there was something like 400 houses that were burned down. There's which is terrible, but obviously, but let's say if we're going to make a thematic map and we wanted to offer, in this case, maybe resources to houses were damaged, but were not entirely lost, we might want to filter to just those houses. And the way that you do that is that we're going to go over to I'm going to remove the air quality one now first. So I'm going to go click the drop down on the three arrows, click remove. Yes, remove. And then I'm going to go down to the DINs is the next one down. And I am going to click the filter button. It's the little kind of funnel looking thing in the middle. Clicking that, and you'll see this filter option come up. We're going to go from damage is, we don't want destroyed. We want something like affected. So that might be people that need resources. And it could be a number of these, but we're just going to go with affected 1 to 9 right now. And then apply filter. And you can see now there's just these green icons of the locations. Good. What might be interesting is to see what the access to the local cooperative extension center might be, because those extension centers I mentioned before, they have advisors there for land use, for food banks, all that kind of stuff. There's resources that are available. And like you might see on your Google Maps, you can map a route to these different sites. So, and think of this as either something you could share with those prospective, like possible clientele or people that might need help, or it might be a map for you to go out and check to see if maybe if there was anything you could do to help, if there was like an outreach kind of situation. But before we do that, something that just bugs me is that Cooperative Extension Research Center, or the Cooperative Extension Center in Placerville, is just a little kind of inconsequential dot right now. It's not really very meaningful. And one of the key things about maps is that you want to make the things that are most important kind of pop out. So to do that, let's change the style of that dot. And that's the ANR location CSV file. And under that, you'll have that circle, square, triangle. Click that for change style. You'll have this drop-down option come up. And then for the options, you can click that first option here, the first one that's available. And we're going to go up to the little dot and just click on the dot. Hopefully this is clear through your screen what I'm doing here. So I went and changed style, options, and then click on the dot, and you'll see this pop up. You'll have a variety of like basic icons, but I like to do something like a little bit more intuitive. And to do that, we'll go over here under the shape. So we're under shape right now. Click the drop down. And before you do anything else, I just want to note that you can do a couple of neat things. One, you can bring in custom images, or you can use all these other variety of kind of thematic icons in your map. But what we'll do right now is just click General Infrastructure. And from there, let's scroll down a little bit until we find something that's more interesting, like a building kind of icon. Click on that. And this is, I mean, you can click on whichever one you want. It's your map, but yeah, it's just what I prefer right now. And I just know that this is too small, being like a little teeny icon. You can see the size of it up here at the very top. That's much too small for this map. So instead, let's highlight over the 8 and type in 30 instead. So then you have a decent size icon that'll show up. That's going to kind of pop a little bit, and click OK. And you'll see then that pops up on your map. Good. Next, we already did the filter. I showed you the steps for enrichment. That's an optional one. I did that out of turn just because it seemed pertinent earlier. And then the same thing for join is, oh, wait a minute. Let's do enrichment. Actually, no, I showed you a join, which is very, very similar to enrichment, but there's this kind of another sort of takeaway here that I can convey, is that with the enrichment, kind of like with the joining that I referred to with the air quality, a lot of the times these hosted feature layers by another organization, they might get deprecated, they might disappear tomorrow, and you want to put them into your collection. Once you've run a filter and you do any kind of analysis, it will only do an analysis on those features that are currently available. So right now, let's back up out of the change style a little bit. There we go. Oh, shoot. Dang it. I forgot to say okay. Okay, going to do that again. Redundancy doesn't hurt for learning anyways. We're going to go to the ANR locations, same steps, click options, click style, go down, click the building, up it to 30, click OK. And the reason I didn't add that is because it's hidden on my screen down at the bottom that I need to click OK here and then done for it to really stick. And then it's not just a dot there. Good. Now, speaking of the enrichment, we're going to do that with the DINS layers just for now. We're not going to go through the full process of the enrichment, but I want to just show you how it can be done. One way you can do it is you can do the analysis tab on here, or you can click analysis up at the top. And let's do the one at the top for now. We have raster analysis within our organization as an added plugin. Some of you might not have access to that, but for now, we'll click on the feature analysis and then data enrichment. and click Enrich Layer. So we don't want to do the ANR locations. We would want to do the DIN, so the damaged structures, and specifically the 1 and 9% damage that we filtered to. And then you have the option of clicking variables. Unfortunately, my very favorite of all the enrichment options, which was landscape, is no longer there anymore. But we do have other options that we can look at, including the at-risk areas. So we can click on that. And then we could do a poverty index. And then if we did apply, and don't do apply right now because I timed it. It took about 2 or 3 minutes to run to get it, to finish this up. But what it does in the end, I'm going to cancel out of that to show you what would happen if I would have run that. I'm going to back up again until I'm over here. Let's go to the DINS layer and click the little table. So I'll give you a second to back up to get to this point. Click Show Table. And what you see under there is the affected 1 to 9% buildings. If I would have done an enrichment, it would have created a new fresh layer that would be in my content with an added column or columns plural over to the right with the poverty level data that was associated with that enrichment, or whatever other type of enrichment you would do. So that would just it would assume that data or join that data into the table of the DINS layer that we have here, but only for the affected areas. Noting that all of the other points, the burned down houses and so forth, that is still all within this layer. It's features, but it's just in this case, we've already filtered to bring that back. What could be done is go back to the filter, and you could remove filter here by clicking that, but don't right now. Good. Next, we're going to do a little bit of another step of analysis. We did the join proximity. So proximity would be something I mentioned before about creating like a Google map to each of these prospective clients or needers of help. And so what we could do is go into, it'd be we're going to use the proximity function with selecting the Caldor DINS public view layer. And what that means is that we can go in here to the DINS public view, go to click on the analysis one here. Perform analysis is a little box with the dots in it. Feature analysis. We're going to go down to proximity, use proximity. And then we're going to click Find Nearest. Good. And that Find Nearest, it already recognizes the Caldor DINS was the one we started off on, so that's there. The ANR locations CSV is the other point layer, so it automatically detected that would be the one that you would want to use. Line distance doesn't make a lot of sense. We're not like flying like a crow, so we're going to want to have road distance. So we can do driving distance or driving time. We'll just click driving distance for now. What you would do is you go down further, limit the number of nearest to just 1. So it's just 1 to 1 instead of like 1 to to all the different cooperative extension offices. 100 miles is fine. One thing though, two things actually you'd want to do is include route layer, so then it actually creates a line layer along the roads to and from the office and the sites. And then lastly, use current map extent, because that will limit it to just what we're looking at here and won't create maps all over the state to all the rest of the cooperative extension offices if there's others that are within 100 miles. And then lastly, we'll click on Show Credits. And what this does, it'll show the total record is 57, and it's going to take a maximum credit required of 28 credits, which is doable. But we don't need to do that right now. Again, it's one of those things I timed. It took about 3 or 4 minutes to run this process. So to make your life easier, if you search in ArcGIS Online for nearest ANR facilities to threatened structures, I'll copy that, Control C. So I'm copying that from the beginning of page 20, number 7, because analysis, again, will take too long. What we'll do is we'll just go up to Add Data, search for layers from ArcGIS Online, Control V. So searching for nearest ANR facilities to threatened structures, click Enter. And if I moved a little too quick there, that's I'll repeat that, but we'll take it from like number 7, copy and paste that up into your search parameters, into your ArcGIS Online search under Add Data. And then the very first one, I'll just push the plus sign on that. And this would be the results that you would have from that process. Shane, I saw your screen came on. Did you have a comment? Oh, he's muted.
Nope.
Oh,
I must have just bumped it. No worries.
It looked like, yeah, I thought he might have a comment. Good. So there we have a basic kind of processed results that are there nearest facilities to threatened structures. Actually, this is maybe a little bit more limiting than the 57 or so, but still the principle applies. The same principle applies. I must have used different filtered layer. Good. So there we have some steps into that, into creating actually something that looks decent. Next, we're going to move on to the fire perimeter data. So the fire perimeter data is going to be come from the FTP of CAL FIRE, which has a really neat collection of data. And let's look at that right now, because I was so excited when I found this. I'll go down, click on that. You can open that as the way you do it in your own browser. Bring it up. I'm going to expand this so you can see it a little bit better. So this is specifically for the Caldor fire. Don't do what I'm about to do, because it'll just it might get you lost in trying to get back to where you need to be in a moment. But if I go up the parent directory, and up higher, we're in the incident data parent directory of that. We're in the Caldor fire, but we have all these other various layers that are in here, including the infrared data, which is the almost near real-time data collection of whoever's flying the operations that collect the information for the GIS layers. That is really good if you need to know, like, if the fire is about ready to burn your house down, and like within like every 4 hours in the case of the Caldor fire, either the USGS, NEROPS, or Courtney Aviation, various contractors were flying, and they were all dumping their data into here to see. And so here's some of the options of their overflights with their imagery geo-referenced, and then basic vector outlines of it. But if I go up even higher, you can see all of these other fires that are included within here as well. So these are all like other recent large fires. So if you like the River Complex fire, for example, that burned the Hopland Research Extension Center, where Shane Fire is located at, that data is all in there as well. So I'm going to go back in, like I said, hopefully if you did follow me this far out, go back into the Caldor fire, go to GIS, incident data, and that's where we started off at right here. We're going to scroll all the way down to the second from last, click on that. And what you'll see in here is a there's a geodatabase file, and there's just a perimeter zip file. The perimeter zip file is nicely packaged up, and I'll show you what I mean by that. I'm going to click on this to download it. I'm going to go into that folder. So you do that as well. Click on the Caldor, the second one, the perim zip. And then I'm going to show in folder to see where it's at. And I'm going to move this out somewhere a little bit more so I can see it better. I'm going to just cut. You don't need to do this, but I'm going to move it out to somewhere that I can find it a little bit better. Let's see. I'm going to put it in a folder and then paste it here. So I said there's a number of peripheral files that are associated with a shape file. I'm going to unzip this right here. You don't need to do this, by the way. This is just for show and tell. I'm going to extract it. And you'll see that here you have your database file, your projection file, your SBN, your SBX, like indexing files. You have the actual shape file, more indexing files. So you have all of these files. They have to be zipped up, though, to be pulled into ArcGIS Online. Something to note is that most of the time, ArcGIS Online can accept layers that are in most common projections. This, I don't remember what this one is in offhand. I used to remember, but it's but if it's not in Web Mercator is the ideal projection. But if it's in something like UTM or something, some very common projection, California Albers, for example, ArcGIS Online can transform it when it brings it in to fit the map, fine. But I do mention this because if you have something kind of unusual, like some of the state plane projections, for example, they might not go into your session. It won't work. So now that I've downloaded that, I can go back to my session here, and I'll click out of this, and I'm going to add in data from a layer. So from the ArcGIS Online, instead of that, we'll go to my content. Hold on a second. No, I need to click add at the top. My bad. One arrow up. So at the top, add layer from file, and we'll click that. So the first option was the shape zipped up. Conveniently, that's the way it downloaded. And so we're going to choose that file that we just brought in. I moved it over to that trash folder, so I have to go there. Yours will probably be in your default of your downloads, so you might have to go to the downloads instead. I'll click on that and click open, and then import layer. Good. So when you see it come in, it's not that pretty. Not what you want, really. It's just a grayed out area. But where it's time to do a little bit of symbology or stylization of this to make it work a little better. And the way to do that is we're going to go down to the single symbol, the second one down, select, and then click options. And then you'll show up similarly to what we did before with the with the UCANR locations. We're going to click on the symbol itself, and then you're going to have a variety of options here. And what I recommend for now is that we'll go up and click on the fill. Let's make it. Well, first let's set like the fill is like black, but make the transparency really high, something up, I don't know what order that is, somewhere like 90% transparent. Then we'll go up to the outline and select black for that and make the transparency 0. And we can probably leave the weight of it the same. You can adjust outline automatically, or which is nice. Sometimes you want to have it set as like a certain pixel, but either one is fine right now. So adjust automatically and then click OK. And look, now we have a nice clean perimeter layer to make it look pretty on your map when you publish it and share it with people. So something that I should have been doing all along that we've been doing this is I should have been telling you to save it. And so we're going to do that right now. We're going to go up to where it says save, click on the drop down and click save as. So this is where I mentioned earlier, you have to add in tags. For now, I'm going to just type in, let's see, AGO. You can type in whatever you want to call your map. AGOL workshop practice or whatever the case is. I'm just going to do AGOL practice map. And I might have done that before, so I'm going to give it a number. I don't know what number, how many times I've done this map, so I'll just put something in like that. Tags are required. And so because I've done this again a whole bunch of times in either practice or in workshops, I'm going to put in junk. That way I can, like I showed you earlier, I can search my content for junk and then get rid of this layer. Once it's in there, I can either click on it. If it doesn't come up automatically, you might have to press enter for it to take. So I'll just click it there and then I'll just say fire, enter, and so forth. They just add some tags again to make it discoverable. What you can do if you already have folders, save in a folder. I'll just leave it to the default of ArcGIS training, but if you had other folders, you could do that as well. And then we'll click Save Map. Good. Once it's saved, then we can start thinking about sharing it, and we'll do that here after another. We'll take another, say, 7-minute break, because this I think is a good place to stop or take a pause. Yes, it is. We'll take a pause until let's say 20 after, so 3:20, and then we'll come back and we'll finish up the rest of the exercise, and we'll be good to go. Any questions? I go to the chat now.
Hey, Sean, Alec has a question. He's having an issue uploading the zip file.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And he said he's wondering if he can upload each one at a time. I'm thinking he means the individual files that make up the shapefile. If that's what you're asking, Alex, you can't upload them individually. ArcGIS Online will not know what to do with that. It does require it to be in a zip file.
A question for Alec. Are you using an IGIS account? And you can unmute yourself if you'd like.
Sorry, no, I'm using the Cal Berkeley account.
Okay. So I wonder if that has something to do with it, because there's
It should be okay, because it's vector data, so you should be able to import vector data with no problem.
Right. That's interesting, though. If you had trouble, maybe try re-downloading it, or make sure that you didn't download the geodatabase option. So if I go back to here, there's a couple. If I go up one layer, remember we went from the second to last. I think there was something wrong with the last one, the second to last. And if you brought in the geodatabase zip, then that won't work. You need to bring in the perimeter zip.
And I would also say make sure there's no special characters in the file name. That could also cause a problem.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me try that then. Thank you.
Sure. Very good. Any other questions?
Hi, Sean. This is Heidi Holmquist. So my program froze for a few minutes. And so I was able to upload the zip file, but I didn't catch what you were saying about like the opacity and how to make it look correct.
Okay. Sure. Well, while we're on break, I'll just do that quickly again. So I'm going to just say okay and done on all of this. So this is the perimeter one. Once it's loaded in here, you go up to the little circle, square, triangle, change style.
Okay.
Select the options for single symbol. And inside of that, you'll click the little symbol next to symbols, the little square. It'll be a different color for you when it comes in. Here, what I did is I select black and then brought the transparency all the way over to almost 100%. I found that it just kind of like it makes it just a little easier to see the symbols on top of it if there's a little teeny bit of a shadow on it. That's effectively what we're doing. And that's under fill. Switching to outline, select black again, but this time we will set the transparency to very to like 0 basically, and click OK. And then you have a really crisp outline around it. And that's and then we'll end up okaying and okaying when we're done. Okay, and then done to get back there.
Okay, I got it.
All right.
Thank you.
Sure. I'll be back in a few minutes. All right, we'll get going again here. So quick team, let's see. I saw Alec had a question about what page to find the changing styles. I went a little off script, or at least out of order. There is a section though at the bottom of 21 going into 22 that shows you how to do that. Just in case, while we're coming back, we got plenty of time here. I'll just do it one more time. Once it's in, it should come in with it in the style changing kind of pane. And what you do is just go into options, click on the symbol, and then you have change your fill color to something like black and move the transparency almost all the way over to 100. And then select outline, make it black again, but make the transparency 0 and click OK. And this is where everyone should probably be at roughly right now. And what we'll need to do so we don't lose those changes is go down and click OK and click done. And then we have that there. So now let's make this a little bit more pretty, because it depends on what you're looking for, what you're planning to use the map for, or what you want, what your target audience might need it for. And looking at it at like a burn area over like this topography like this is not as valuable as actually seeing it over an image, so you could maybe compare how close your house is to the actual fire. And one way to do that is we can just go up to the top and click base map. And my preference, my favorite of actual imagery, base layers, is the hybrid imagery. And we'll click on that. And then you get a nice clean background in that way. If I zoom in then, the heck? It's interesting. I thought it would be, okay, I wonder why it's opaque partially. That's interesting. I would expect it to be darker, more vibrant instead of having that kind of opaque background. But anyhow, so this way, at least you can zoom in though, and with fairly high resolution, be able to see features behind it. What's puzzling me right now is why the heck it's got like almost like it's partially transparent. What I can do to fix that, there's the hybrid imagery. Let's see here, style. Maybe not, it won't let you change the style of it. Okay, Huh. Shane, do you have any idea? I've never seen that before. He hears me. Anyhow, well, we can continue as if it was just, oh, I know what it is. It's the counties. That's right. There we go. I turn off the counties and it'll be clear. There you go. Let's see, answer my own question. See, what I do is when I have a GIS question, I ask Shane because he seems to know. He's like the guru of all things GIS. It's awesome. And so now we have a fairly nice clean layer with a backdrop that then we could zoom in. And an example of that would be, I had a friend when the fire was going that lived, where was that at? Right. No, it was on the other side. Right at this tip, and that burned halfway through his property, and his house was right in that little niche. And he kept on calling me, say, hey, is it to my house yet? Because we had all had to evacuate. So there was just interesting. But anyhow, but being able to look closer is nice if you have the actual imagery like this, like kind of Google Earth-esque. So moving on. So now that we have this set up, the next step is to move from a web map to a web mapping application. To do that, you need to share it and then you publish it to in a web mapping application. And the difference there is that a web map is like, this is the base information that you kind of define what layers you have in there, the order, the names, which we might want to change. Like, so instead of this complex long name, I might click on the 3 dots and go to rename and say just Caldor Fire Perimeter, something like that. I'll just do that right now. You can do that as well if you'd like. I'll show you why this is important here soon. You don't have to have spaces or like under scores and so forth in this case. Good. Okay. That's a little bit more intuitive. We won't do it for all the rest of them. We'll have a little time to play here shortly. So you can maybe tweak things as you like. But once you have these names changed to the ways you want them to be, then we can go up and save. You might also want to change the name of your map to something other than that if you'd like, if it's important for your final map title, because this would not look pretty. I could change that as well. But next we're going to go to share. And what this does is it lets you define what level you want to share it with. I could just say everyone for now. I don't care. There's nothing in here that's I don't know, sensitive or whatever, but it is important though to make sure you don't share data that you don't have the rights to do so, or maybe there's other ethical reasons. Shane touched on that earlier, I think, in his presentation, but it is something that comes up. And I can think of cases where there's like, in good faith, people have had advisors come out to look at their property and found, say, broom rape is like a really nasty invasive species in strawberries, and they're going to destroy it that day, but they don't want to have a record that there's like their property had broom rape on it, because for liability purposes and in good faith, they'd asked to come out for identification purposes. That was in that case, that was an interesting day of going out with a hazmat suit to check it out with a drone. But I digress again. So you want it, but you wouldn't want to publish that for everybody to see or you're never going to have anyone calling you to come out and identify, I don't know, potentially invasive species in that case. So, but in this case, there's nothing sensitive. So I could just share it to everyone. I could do it to a group, you name it. And then what I would do is go down and create a web app. And for right now, you can see there's all kinds of these that are available. There's a lot, like one of the neat things about, I say neat, it's interesting things I'd say about ESRI or Esri. They like to have a lot of redundant ways of making web mapping applications. And what I mean by that, web mapping applications, that is the way that you can have, take your map and add widgets, legends, titles, you name it, all of those other great things to it. You can also bring it into other kind of story map builders, which is a different formatted template that kind of like lets you kind of journalistically tell the story of the map in a different ways. Those all are web mapping applications that oftentimes resemble what you'd expect to see on like a web page. For right now, there's a bunch of different ways you can do the builder, you can do dashboard, but right now, configurable apps will just select something basic. Because that'd be, you can go on to online tutorials on how to do all these. But what we'll do is just create a web app. And in here, we'll just call the title something else. I'll just say app. You can call it whatever you like right now. You don't have to have underscores in it now. In this environment, you see underscores a lot for people that have done GIS for a lot of years, just because through habit, there's certain functions in the code that don't play well with spaces. So, but yeah, for this, we don't have to worry about that. You can add in a summary. It already has the tags that from before that were carried over in the same location. And then what I'll do is I'll click done. And it'll take a minute for it to come up. And then you can use the tutorial that's up at the top for the settings that are different ways that you can set this up. Next, how to share it gives you the information. Once you've done this a few times, those prompts won't be there anymore. And get the Zoom window out of the way. But you can go through and read these, I might advise. But I'm not going to spend a ton of time on that. What I will do, though, is just kind of give you a little orientation. This has actually changed since this is the web app builder as kind of environment now, where you can go in. So you'll see that the title is up at the top. You can do search settings. You can do other, you can sharing settings, all of that. And then once you have it set up, you can publish it. And that's what we'll do right now. I'm not going to go through all of the other settings for right now because just for time's sake, because it is already a halfway decent looking map. So, but I will click publish and confirm. By the way, if you want to add different kind of widgets and all that kind of thing, there's those are all within those other apps. This is why I just picked basic for right now, just so we can get through and make sure that that it's easily working, and I can let you play with other ones. It's usually pretty intuitive which things work and where, and most often anymore, I use Experience Builder is one of the apps that we use. That's and I'll show you how to get to that in a minute to create your web mapping applications. There's all these divergent ways I said are interesting about how Esri sets up that's how you can do things in different ways. But now that I've published this, I can launch it. And this is what it's going to look like. So it's just a basic web map. It doesn't have a title or anything in there right now. So what we can do is go back and then close this. Configure basic map, get started. You can do the, yeah, I think all of these things, wow, this is different than what I'd seen just recently. Good. But we can collapse anyway. So we have this map. You see that it was kind of not spaced ideally. Here is over to the side one of the ways that you can fix that is click on this little cluster at the top, this cluster of options at the top right-hand corner or close to the corner, and you'll have all these other options. I mentioned this earlier as a good way to be able to change the configuration of stuff underneath your web mapping application. And the way you can do that is click on your ArcGIS Online. Once it comes up, go to Content. The practice map that this is the app. The next one below it is what it's based on. So we can click on that. And so it should be at the top of your contents is the most recent things that you've done. Click on the practice map or whatever you called it. This should be probably the second one down. Open in Map Viewer Classic over on the right-hand side. The reason why this is not centered the way that I would want it to when it's in the published version is because underline it, this needs to be squared up here. And so we want to set the zoom level and the position here and then save it. And then when I go back here and I share it again and launch, it should be squared up now, and see how it came in better this time. Good. Now there's other ways. I mean, so again, if you're in this map too, you can, and I'll just do this quickly. You don't have to do this. This is just a little bit extra show and tell. I mentioned, oops, no, actually, which one was it that has the cluster of dots here? Oh, there we go, back to here. There's other ways of doing this, including the experience builder that I said is one of my preferences now, that brings in different types of ways you can make web mapping applications. And so I can create something new, like a blank full screen, create. You don't have to do this. This is just another example. This is like a whole nother workshop would be to do how you add in all these map elements and so forth. This is where I can add in either data or maps, you name it, into my project, and then drag over like the legends and you name it into the thing, and then publish it from here. But we're not going to do that right now. I just want to show you that you can get to that through those dots. Again, I digress. So now we do have a nice map that looks that looks like that. With this, if it's been published to everybody, this URL can now be shared with basically anybody, or you can put it into an iframe, which is always kind of neat to do. I don't know if any of you do web design of any sort, or you have your own web building application for your organization, like we do here in ANR. But what we can do is copy that URL. And in this case, I have our site builder up right here. And what I could do is I'm going to just add in a new asset, and the asset name, it'd be just, I don't know, iframe. Go down, find iframe. Where's it at? There it is. Alphabetical, of course. Show asset title, no. Save asset. The URL that I just copied. And then update asset. I don't know what else is in this. I just threw it on there. It looked like something that was it's just a test page. And then if I view the current site, takes a second, but that could be embedded inside of your website. on, like, for example, if we put this in our IGIS website, that's how easy it is to get it in there. You could also just send that URL to your mom or your grandma or whatever the case is, and then they'll have easy access to it as well. So one more thing that I guess one of the last things, because I've every time I do this workshop, I don't skip enough things, and I never leave enough time for you all to play with the apps, try to do your own kind of just little kind of choose your adventure. This time, very intentionally, I kind of zoom through and skip certain things. So we'd have some question and answer time at the end here, a time for you to explore a little bit, and that sort of thing. So what else you can do here is, if you have this map up, you can change the names again, reshare it as a different web app. You can do the web app builder is one of the ones I like here. Get started. You can go in here and add in titles and publish it here and see what the kind of differences are, because you have different themes that are really neat over here. This is one of the ones that I like a lot. Just the default foldable theme. You can have billboard. It'll show you just different options of templates that you can put in. Explore that a little bit if you'd like. And again, all that is I just do that. I had to back up now. Just from the sharing, leave. Just from here, just sharing with different web app options. Again, that could be a whole nother workshop. And again, it's fairly intuitive. Good. Let me see. I'm going to look at the chat, make sure that I'm not. Yeah, so there's. Maggie's right. I do love imagery-based maps, but imagery-based maps are not always what you want. That's so true. There's so many different cartographic ways about doing this, and just know that you have your creativity license when you're doing your maps. There's not one right way to do it, and then there's reasons for certain things. General rules, though, are that you want to have the things that are most important on your map pop out the most is key, and then have, like Shane says, you want to try to just resist the urge to try to create multiple themes of a map. Just have one theme if you can, or it gets too complicated. Contrast is important. I'm trying to make sure that your map is intelligible or visible for people with color blindness might be an issue. So part of that, you can use a squint test to see what kind of pops out a little bit more. There's a color brewer is something that you can find online, but putting in hex codes in this is in the style is not something that's easily done. I don't believe, not at least in this environment. You have to do that in other like mapping environments.
This is a feature in ArcGIS Pro that you can actually have it show you different colorblind, what things look like to different types of color blindness, but they haven't implemented that in ArcGIS Online yet.
Yeah, and like Shane mentioned earlier too, there's so many. You can do all kinds of creative things in ArcGIS Pro that you can't do here in ArcGIS Online. So if you really want to do something kind of cartographic and neat, you might have to do it in Pro, and then sometimes you can publish that to ArcGIS Online depending on some various factors. So once you have all of this done, you can save your project. I'm going to double check the instructions to see if there's anything that was really base map. I do all of this, most of this from memory.
Hey, Sean, someone from Trinity asked about, from the audience's point of view, what is the difference between viewing a web map versus a web app?
Oh, yes. you could probably answer that better than me. But
yeah, I can try. If Sean, if you were to go back to the web map real quick.
Yep.
So one thing you'll notice on the web map is you have a lot of flexibility. You can go in, you can set transparency, visibility scales, like the symbology. If Sean was to go back to just the normal table of contents.
Oh, yeah.
Yep, exactly. You can really have control about what you're seeing. You can add new layers. There's a bunch of things you can do in a web map, including changing base mats, editing, analysis, all these other things that you see along the top bar. The minute you create a web app, so if Sean was to, let's say, go to AGOL Practice Map app, all of a sudden, all those options go away. It's only what you allow the user to do. So in this case, Sean's letting them show a legend or to search for something like a search for an address or something. That's it. They can't add new data. They can't share from here. They can't do analysis from here. So you're limiting what they can do. And in this case, it's a basic map, basic web app. But in the more elaborate web apps is you can really start to like change the color of what the underlying container looks like, kind of like what Sean showed with the web map builder. You can really start to make it look really nice. And in my view, the web map isn't necessarily nice. You would want to have a web app and really strategize and really limit what the people can do with your app, because you often don't want them to be able to do everything, but there's very, very succinct things you want them to do.
Yep. And to add on to that, there's a lot of purposes for your web mapping applications. And sometimes you'll create your maps that you'll want to have the features within them editable. So you'll have to go into your content, set the settings, and where that comes into play is if you say you publish it for something like field maps, where you want to be able to adjust it there. And then that dictates different characteristics of what you do. But yes.
And I think the piece that Maggie just added to the chat is really important, is that you are in control of what they get to do. So you can give them things, you can take things away, but you're in control of what they do.
Good. Said I wanted to make sure there was time for questions and answers here, and I can kind of cruise through and do a couple other things that that are really nice to know about. So going back to the map here, I haven't got a chance to read through all the questions yet, but I'll come back to them in a second. Other things you can do besides changing names to something more intuitive is to adjust the pop-ups. So say if I click on this address here, you'll see this is what the pop-up is. It's just FID. Who cares what the FID is? I mean, and then that also comes up if I go into the map here and I click on it, FID, and then the address. What I might want to do is add in, sometimes telephone numbers can be added into the attribute columns, other things, but for now, I'm going to go to the pop-ups for that specific layer and go configure pop-ups. In here, see, these field attributes will display. I'm going to configure attributes, and I'm going to say I don't need to see the FID number. So it just doesn't make sense, and click OK. And now when I click on one of these addresses, oh wait, I have to click OK for it to stick. Now when I click on it, you see that it doesn't have that come up. This is all called from the attribute table, by the way. So this is just, there's not a lot of attributes. There's just an address in here. If the CSV file, maybe next time I'll just update the names of the offices. You can have a phone number that's associated for someone to contact, that kind of thing. That's all in the CSV file that you pull in to start with. But you can decide what you want there. You can also do this. You can go in again, configure pop-ups, and then you can, let's see, that's not the right one. Configure pop-ups, go to, the heck, I thought that you could do aliases. Oh yes, and now you can just click on it, and you can just change the name of the field alias right here, and then once you okay that, then that's the name. So you don't have any kind of funky characters or something like that. So it looks just the way that you want it. So that's something that comes up fairly often with the maps as well. So let's see, we have like 10 more minutes. It doesn't hurt to, we can end early if folks like, or we can have more questions, or you can continue the play. I'm going to stick around for the next 10 minutes, and I'm going to read the chat right now too, to make sure there's nothing that I didn't address. Before everyone starts to head out, one thing that I will note is that Andy Lyons is going to send out an evaluation in a few minutes, or if he hasn't already. And if you could please fill that out, it would be very much appreciated. We do refer to that information to make these workshops better. It also helps when we go and do our merit packages and that kind of thing to refer to the evaluations to show that we're serving everybody appropriately, that kind of thing. So yes, please fill out those evaluations. It really means a lot to us. It looks like all the questions seem to have been answered. For those of you that are heading out, have a fantastic Friday afternoon. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you again in the next workshop. Much appreciated for coming.